I'm Hillary Mulick, a wedding photographer based in the Carolinas, and welcome back to another episode on my YouTube channel. This week's topic is 3 mistakes that you might be making when you are posing your clients. And this can be for any type of session. It can be for a wedding, engagement session, family session, maternity session, any type of session. These are 3 mistakes that you might be making when posing your clients and how to fix them. Mistake number 1 is not setting expectations prior to the session. This can be not sending them a planning guide of what to expect during their session, how to pick proper outfits, how to prepare for their session with hair and makeup, just different tips that you have in order to prepare for them for their session. If you are not doing that, then you are not setting good expectations for them. Another way you might not be setting expectations is setting expectations right before the session starts. So when I meet my clients at a location, right before the session, I tell them what to expect throughout the session. So they've already gotten, weeks or months previous, they got my planning guide. They were able to plan for outfits and location, hair and makeup, plan for their dog being there, all those things. And then they get to the session and I want to set expectations again. Let them know what to expect throughout this session. I tell them that my style is very candid. And so a lot of the session is going to be, walking around, them holding hands, them nuzzling. I tell them that I will guide them every step of the way and that we'll have a really great session and that I'm super excited to hang out with them for the next 30 minutes or hour or so. And so I think that setting expectations prior to the session is super, super important before you start posing the client. So setting expectations with a planning guide when they book, and then also setting those expectations again right before you start shooting the session. It's gonna really help calm the nerves of your clients, and it's going to make for a really great photo session. The second mistake you might be making when posing your clients is overly posing. Now, you may be confused by this. You may think, well, that's my job as a photographer. I'm supposed to pose them throughout the whole session. But there is such a thing, in my opinion, as overly posing the couple in a way that it just starts to feel unnatural and uncomfortable for them. So what I like to do is I like to ease them into poses that are really comfortable for them. And I do this by not over explaining the pose when I'm first telling them to get into it. So for example, I might tell the couple to wrap your arms around each other, and then I'll just let them wrap their arms around each other. And every couple has their own way of, wrapping their arms and hugging each other. Me and my husband, we are a foot apart. So when I wrap my arms around him, I actually wrap my arms around his waist because his shoulders are so freaking high because he's really tall. And then he wraps his arms just kind of like around my shoulders and then down around my back. And that's how we hug each other. Whereas maybe a couple that is a little bit more of the same height, the girl might put her arms around his shoulders, whereas he will put his arms maybe under her arms and around her back. And that is just what's most comfortable for them. So if you were to explain a pose, let's say a photographer was posing me and my husband and we're both really different in height, and they're like, Hillary, can you put your arms around his neck? And then Jason, can you put your arms around his waist? I mean, that's fine, but that's just not how we normally wrap our arms around each other. And so that type of pose would just feel a little bit unnatural to us. So my advice to you is to just tell them a pose and then see what they do. And if you feel like they need help, then you can go in and help them by telling them where to place their hands or their arms or their feet. But initially, just maybe, tell them to sit on the ground next to each other and snuggle in. I love using kind of vague terms like nuzzle in, snuggle in, wrap your arms around each other without overly directing them so that they can kind of put themselves in a position that is most comfortable. And then I can go in and help pose even more if I feel like they're struggling or need a little bit help. And that's how I'm able to keep the couple a little bit more comfortable, and I'll also make the photos and the poses more natural to them because they're naturally putting themselves into positions that they would do normal day-to-day life without being photographed. The third mistake that you might be making when posing your clients is pointing out mistakes during a session. Now, This is really easy to do. I'm sure this has happened to you where you are photographing a couple, you put them in a pose and the pose just isn't working. And so you're thinking as you're behind the camera, you're like, oh my gosh, this like doesn't look comfortable. The pose just isn't working. What do I do? And so you might be drawing too much attention to that posing mishap. Or if they're posing themselves in such a way that might look a little bit unflattering, maybe you're accidentally pointing attention to that. Years ago, I once second shot with somebody and they were posing a couple on their wedding day, and one of the people, I think it was the groom, he kind of had his chin down and she was photographing at such an angle where you can, like, when his chin was like this, you could see like, you know, the double chin or the triple chin or whatever. If I were in that situation, I would have just moved myself into a different angle so I didn't see that. But she actually pointed it out. She put them in that pose and she was like, oh, I don't like this pose because you have a double chin in this pose, so let's do something else. And I just thought in my head, oh my gosh, why did you just say that to them on their wedding day? And then the groom actually pointed it out multiple times throughout the session. He's like, do I have a double chin here? Do I have a double chin here? And I felt like because she pointed that out, he got really self-conscious throughout the session and was not very comfortable because, you know, she put them in a pose in which he, you know, had multiple, like, looked like he had a double chin in that pose. Where if she would have just moved herself, or if I were in that situation and I put a couple in a pose that maybe didn't look very flattering, like it didn't look as flattering as maybe I would have thought it would have looked in my head, I take one photo and then I move on. I never point out that, oh, this pose isn't working or you don't look good in this. Just if you have a couple in a pose that just isn't working for them, then take one picture and say, okay, let's go over here and do something else. And then that way the couple will never know that you actually, you know, didn't like that pose that you put them into, or they, you know, didn't look very natural in that pose. You just take one photo, move on, and you don't end up using that one photo in their final gallery later. Also, on that same note of not drawing attention to posing mishaps, make sure to tell your couples throughout a session that they are doing a really good job. I am constantly giving my couples good, positive feedback throughout the session so that they feel good and confident about themselves. I tell them that they're doing a good job, that I love the way that they're posing each other. Oh, the way they're looking at each other looks really good. Just tell them that throughout the entire session, and it just makes them feel good throughout the session. It makes them feel more confident in photos. And even if there are some poses that I might put them in that maybe aren't working for them specifically, I'll just take one photo, move on, tell them that they're doing a great job, and then move on to the next pose. No big deal. And that was it. Those are 3 mistakes that you might be making when posing your clients and how to fix them. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in more posing tips, I have a free guide how to get a variety of images with just one pose. It's my secret to posing my clients less and keeping them calm and relaxed throughout a session while actually still getting a huge variety of photos for their final gallery. You can download that with the link down in the description. And I will see you again next week for another episode on my YouTube channel. Bye.